Welcome to Asian American Life. I'm Ernabelle DeMillo. Asian American lawmakers are making history, and many were sworn right here at City Hall. Plus, it's been 1 year since the Atlanta spa shootings and the vicious attack of an Asian American woman walking to church in Midtown. I recently spoke to her daughter to reflect on this past year. I'll have her story coming up, but first, here's a look at what's ahead. Meet New York's most diverse city council. Historical lessons, the public theater's true story of the Chinese lady. Spice up dinner tonight with Omsom. And for all you bookworms out there, you'll want to visit New York's first Asian American bookstore. This and more on Asian American Life. It's been 1 year since the vicious attack of Vilma Carey went viral. I recently spoke to her daughter Liz, who has spent the last year speaking out against anti-Asian hate and reminding everyone that AAPIs belong.
I vividly remember each time from elementary school to the present day when I've been told, go back to where you came from, or been bombarded with the stereotypical racist Asian accent that people love to do.
This is just one of many anonymous stories on the website AAPI Belong. Liz Carey started this site last year. It's a place where people can share stories of hate and discrimination. And it's Carey's family story you'll find on the first page.
When my mom's incident happened, it changed my entire world. It made me question my identity, my safety, my city, my relationship with my mom, my heritage.
Her mom is Vilma Carey. Last March, while visiting her only child, Vilma was brutally attacked on her way to church. The incident, caught on a security camera, went viral for both the attack and the doorman who ignored what was going on outside. Her attacker kicked her and yelled, "You don't belong here." How's your mom doing now?
Physically, she's much better. She's healed from her fractures and her bodily injuries and has been working to recover her strength. But mentally, that's where I see a lot of limitations still. She will start to venture outside just down the block, but anything beyond that, she will not go outside without an escort.
And her fear is understandable. Since March 2021, Asian hate crimes have spiked. According to the latest data, hate crimes directed toward Asian Americans went up by 339% across the country, as people continue to blame Asians for the coronavirus pandemic. And the fear didn't ease in the new year.
I help you find that place tonight.
In January, hundreds gathered at Times Square in a moving vigil to remember Michelle Go, who was pushed to her death onto an oncoming subway. While her murder isn't being called a hate crime, for many Asian Americans, her death highlighted the fear many still feel. Then a week later, there was another vigil, this time for Yao Pan Ma, who was beaten into a coma last April while collecting cans near his home in Harlem. He died on December 31st after months in the hospital.
Hate is not acceptable to no one, to no ethnic culture. Mr. Yao was just providing for his family on the day he was attacked.
Carey attended Mr. Ma's vigil. It was a bitter cold Friday morning as community organizers and elected officials spoke out against the hate, calling for unity. For Carey, who has a full-time job in the fashion industry, attending vigils and rallies is important to her, and January was busy. She ended the month speaking at the Asian Justice Rally.
As I received these words, I was encouraged to keep moving forward, encouraged by what other people said. I saw that we weren't alone, and I saw that people experienced it, and I thought, how could this be possible, and why is no one doing anything about this?
It's just been a whole year of learning and even changing as a person, where I find myself being more vocal and talking about not only my story, but having a little bit more courage to present my perspective on things that maybe I wouldn't have prior to this.
Like many Asians, Carey's mom, who is Filipino, wanted to keep her incident private.
While we were at the hospital, of course, she said, I don't want anybody to know. I don't want to tell the family to know. I don't want to worry them. I just want to focus on getting home and recovering.
But they didn't have a choice when the video went viral. they found themselves thrust into the glaring media spotlight.
I told her, if this is something that you had to endure and you thankfully were protected and you're okay, maybe it's something we're supposed to share with others and encourage them to speak out because these things are not okay.
Carrie soon realized the power of speaking out. Their story gave others the courage to tell theirs. And it started with messages that poured into the family's GoFundMe page.
And some people actually started to share with me their own personal experiences and more specific stories about details of things that have happened to them and their family and incidents with anti-Asian hate. That feeling of not belonging was very present in what people were saying. And while very somber, it was also uplifting to know that there were these somber shared experiences. And I had thought, what if I could repackage my GoFundMe inbox and present it back to the world?
And AAPI Belong was born. Last May, the words were brought to life at a pop-up exhibit at the Museum of Chinese in America. For Carrie, it's been a nonstop year, transformative, but also exhausting.
How are you doing, Liz?
That's a very good question. I'm okay. That's a loaded question. Am I okay? I definitely am taking strength from the community and people around me, and also the strength that I know I need to have for my mom to help move her forward.
Rest will come soon, but for now, she continues to share her family's story, hoping that they're helping others move forward too. I'm Ernabel DeMillo for Asian American Life.
With you! Christina! With you! Christina! With you! Christina! With you! Christina! With you!
I'm Kyung Yoon. This year, for the first time in New York City history, 5 Asian Americans took the oath of office to serve on the City Council. That's nearly 10% of the 51-member council, a big step forward in political representation for the Asian American community of New York. I spoke with 2 of the new leaders, Linda Lee and Shekhar Krishnan.
We are a community of immigrants. We are a community of public school families.
Meet Shekhar Krishnan, the first Indian American and one of 2 South Asians to be elected to New York City Council, representing the 25th District of Jackson Heights and East Elmhurst, Queens. Before throwing his hat into politics, Krishnan was a longtime civil rights lawyer and housing advocate for low-income New Yorkers.
I ran because I saw the way in which housing is one of the most urgent and central crises in our city, because it connects to every other crisis around us.
Do you need to wash? Oh, thank you. Thank you.
The other South Asian City Council member to make history is Bangladeshi American Shahana Hanif, representing the 39th District of Park Slope in Brooklyn. Hanif is also the first Muslim woman to be elected to city council. Korean-American Linda Lee also made history when she was elected to represent Eastern Queens District 23. Before entering politics, Lee was the president and CEO of the Korean Community Services in Queens, New York's first social service organization focused on the Korean community, providing senior services, Meals on Wheels, and health services.
We saw consistently how there's this whole model minority myth. People don't actually understand and realize that the Asian community does struggle with things. It's, mental health especially is a very hidden, stigmatized issue, like in many other immigrant communities. And so for me, I feel like we can take those things and actually be a voice for our communities in spaces where we typically would not belong or be.
Julie Won joins Linda Lee as the first Korean Americans to serve on the city council. Won represents Queens District 26, which includes Long Island City, Sunnyside, Astoria, and Woodside, Queens. And District 20, covering the neighborhoods of Flushing and Murray Hill, is represented by attorney Sandra Ung, an advocate for survivors of domestic violence and a child of Cambodian refugees.
I think there's something to be said about now for the first time having 5 Asian Americans in the city council and coming from communities where we have that lived experience.
All 5 of the new Asian American City Council members are immigrants or children of immigrants, and that gives them a different lens on the struggles of New Yorkers who don't speak English well or face other barriers to full inclusion.
As children of immigrants or immigrants too, seeing the sacrifices of our parents, how much they struggled, how much discrimination they faced, and then grappling with our own questions of identity. How do we fit in? How do we connect, in my case, India and my culture and our languages with a larger culture here that often invisibilizes us and has for a long time, and invisibilizes our languages or our cultures too. And how do we navigate that to form our own identity?
Linda Lee grew up in Queens, where her parents ran a dry cleaning store. She remembers as a little girl witnessing her father being yelled at by a disgruntled and abusive customer.
And I just remember feeling so helpless in that moment and ashamed and sad that I couldn't speak up for my parents. Like I just literally stood there and didn't do anything and just stood in silence while I saw my dad getting yelled at this woman. And I went home that night and I literally started bawling and crying. And I think that sort of memory left an impression on me. And I think that's why I do want to fight so hard for people that don't have a voice.
At the City Council, Linda Lee was appointed chair of the Committee on Mental Health, Disabilities, and Addiction, and Shekhar Krishnan, chair of the Committee on Parks and Recreation.
Jackson Heights and Elmhurst, as 2 historic Asian American communities, have some of the least amount of green space in all of New York City, even though we were the epicenter of the pandemic. We saw that connection between how green space and park space is as much an issue of place to exercise, public space, as it is a healthcare issue, as it is a housing issue, and the way in which it impacts in particular our own communities.
And this new wave of political leaders hope to inspire the next generation to follow in their footsteps so that Asian American representation, voice, and visibility will only continue to grow. I'm Kyung Yoon for Asian American Life.
Amsam is a Vietnamese phrase that means rowdy and noisy, an appropriate name for a company that isn't shy about bringing culturally uncompromised Asian flavors to your home.
Korean bulgogi, Thai lab, Filipino sisig. Imagine cooking your favorite eat-out Asian dishes at home. That's the concept behind Asian meal starters from startup Amsam.
So Amsam is a proud and loud Asian food brand. We craft what we call starters, which are little pouches filled with all of the aromatics, spices, seasonings, and oils that you would need for a specific Asian dish.
First-generation Vietnamese American sisters Kim and Vanessa Pham co-founded Amsam with a desire to be represented.
Growing up, we didn't feel particularly seen or heard in this, ethnic aisle in most mainstream grocery stores.
Instead, the Pham sisters found diluted Asian flavors not representative of the fastest growing population in the country, which makes up a major buying force.
Really wanted to build a company very intentionally that really reclaims and celebrates not just Asian flavors and cuisines, but stories and communities.
The sister stories start as daughters of Vietnamese refugees who end up rediscovering their roots as adults.
We grew up in Boston in a town that was 98% white. I think for a long time, there was definitely a bit of shame associated with my heritage and my culture. And it wasn't probably until I think around college that I truly stepped into like the power and the beauty and the legacy of being a Vietnamese American woman.
A perspective that inspires the sisters to stay true to their vision.
Restaurants have done all this incredible work to educate the American palate on real deal Asian flavors. And so we were like, wow, the time is so ripe to really kind of create a product that honors these communities and cuisines.
Southeast Asian and East Asian sampler packs are $29 and come with 6 starter packets and easy-to-follow recipes for 3 classic Asian dishes created by AumSum's tastemaker chefs. For shopping selections, along with cutting-edge recipes and the AumSum blog, check out aumsum.com. Flavors that will add spice to your life. For Asian American Life, I'm Susan Jun.
Ma Yi Theater brings to life Lloyd Suh's The Chinese Lady, based on the real story of the first known Chinese woman who came to the United States in 1834 to be put on public display. I caught up with the play's production team during rehearsal.
I am unlike any lady to ever live, and yet here we are.
Ma Yi Theater's production of The Chinese Lady opened at the Public Theater in February to critical acclaim.
One day, while traveling outdoors, a leaf from a wild bush fell into the water.
The play is based on the true story of Ah Fong Moy, who was just 14 years old when her bound feet touched the shores of America. Brought here from Guangzhou, China by merchants, she was exhibited among various curiosities from what they called the Orient. Shannon Tayo plays the role of Ah Fong Moy through the 15 years she was put on display.
If you were to think of an IKEA showroom with a Swedish family inside of it to help sell the items there, that was Ah Fong Moy's purpose. She was brought over by a merchant group to help sell items that they were procuring from China. And then later she moved on to sort of a sideshow attraction.
Tayo debuted as Ah Fong Moy in The Chinese Lady's 2018 world premiere. She says reprising the role in an intimate stage with only 100 seats can be a little intense.
I am portraying an Asian American woman from inside of my own body. So it's very meta because it is the audience watching me in the way that the audience would be watching Ah Fong.
Tayo says playing the role of Ah Fong came just as she was starting to explore Asian American history.
It made me feel more American to know how long we have been here, what we've contributed, what we've gone through, what we've survived. It means so much to me as a person who is transracially adopted to embody this character who came to America, was removed from the culture she was born into, and to portray someone who is slowly coming to terms with her own identity and the identity of the country she is now growing up in.
Chopsticks are elegant and poetic. Forks are violent and easy.
The play doesn't make any attempt to sort of tie it to currently what's happening today, but the audience does that for us.
Ralph B. Peña is not only the director of The Chinese Lady, he's the artistic director of Ma Yi Theater, a group that's been elevating Asian American voices for more than 30 years.
They see the struggles of someone like Ah Fong Moy in the Chinese community in America, and then, of course, they go home and watch the news and see violence against Asian Americans.
Shrimp
and Chinese vegetables. Pot of tea.
Daniel K. Isaac plays Afong's translator, Atong. Like his counterpart, Isaac finds purpose teaching a seminal part of Asian American history through the production of The Chinese Lady.
I grew up not seeing myself on stage or screen, and so to have an Asian American playwright, an Asian American director, Asian American designers and cast, it lets me feel seen for myself, for a younger self that didn't see himself, and to get to create a place for Asian Americans in American history.
I think this is such a beautiful detail, isn't it? A beautiful poem, for it tells us that liberty is fragile.
Playwright Lloyd Suh says he wrote The Chinese Lady to help fill a void in Asian American history.
It was lost to me when I was growing up. I didn't know this stuff, and I felt like it created a hole, you know? It creates this gap of feeling part of history, feeling, you know, connected to, and feeling like I have roots in this country. And I think one thing that I've learned from Afong Moy is that I do, that we all do.
The Chinese Lady is playing at the Public Theater through March. For Asian American Life, I'm Rainer Ramirez.
The immigrant story is a powerful one, and one that's not often told. But a new bookstore in Chinatown hopes to change that.
Nestled in a cozy spot on Mulberry Street in New York City's Chinatown, You and Me Books is a newcomer to the neighborhood. Lucy Yu is the first female to own an Asian American bookstore in the city, a distinction she doesn't take lightly.
How could it be that I'm the first? So I think there's a lot of excitement, but also a lot of work that needs to be done.
Yu is carrying out that work by offering diverse voices in literature with an emphasis on the immigrant story. A child of immigrants, Yu says growing up, she couldn't find herself reflected in any books.
I think that beauty of that story was something that was really missing from books that I was reading growing up. So I wanted to have kids come in here, see kids' books in which they are represented, and have adults come in here and be like, oh, finally, you know, I see a story in which this is my mother, this is my grandmother as the protagonist.
A desire that inspired Yu to open the bookstore cafe with carefully curated works by not only Asian American authors, but also immigrant writers from all over the world.
I think a lot of people come in, they're like, I haven't even heard of 80% of the books here, and that's what gets me really excited. How do we bring light to these voices that have always been there?
Yu chose the name of her store as a playful pun, but also as a tribute to her mother.
YM are my mother's initials, so a lot of what she had to sacrifice and a lot of her story is embedded in mine and, you know, my journey going forward as well.
An unusual journey for the chemical engineer who moved to supply chain management, where she still works a full-time job, early in the morning and late at night, all while running the bookstore during the day.
I poured my life savings into this. I poured everything, you know, into trying to build something that meant a lot to me.
A risk her mother at first couldn't understand.
She grew up in communist China during the Cultural Revolution. She couldn't finish high school because she was sent to the farmlands to basically work for the government without a choice. And so she escaped that, came to the US to try to find stability, to try to find a life in which was better for her and, you know, me, her kid. I think there was a lot of fear in doing something super risky, but when she came here and she sat at the bar with me at the bookstore every single day for 3 weeks, she completely 180'd and was like, you can't close this place down. You gotta keep it open for the community.
Something You is passionate about, building a community space where Asian Americans can connect and support each other during these difficult times. You has partnered with the Cosmos, an Asian female-led mental health organization, to hold events, and the Asian American-owned bean roastery Favor Coffee, which created a You and Me roast called A Novel Blend. Only open a couple of months now, You is in awe of the support she's received, especially from female Asian American authors.
Their stories are what brought me here. So for me to put their stories on the wall and them to come and find more stories, I think that's something just so beautiful.
With a lot of buzz, the future of You and Me seems bright. But even so, You's goals are modest and meaningful.
I hope everyone finds a home here. I think a lot of business owners have 5-year plans, long-term plans. I think about it day by day. We never know what's going to happen, and that's the way that I stay adaptable. But I want someone to feel at home today, and my long-term goals have someone feel at home tomorrow.
For Asian American Life, I'm Susan Junn.
That's our show for now. If you want to learn more about these stories, be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Asian American Life. I'm Ernabelle DeMillo. We'll see you next time.